auditable. So if you accept the premise that we heard about yesterday, that the gold that it is auditable, you got real problems with this machine, right? Because it is completely dependent on the software. And as Martha points out, what the hell are you going to audit? So in 2019, ES&S began its campaign to get the ExpressVote XL certified in New York State. And they were asked a question, the salesperson was asked a question by the New York City Board of Elections, do you have enough of these machines for us if we decided to go ahead and buy them? And the salesperson said with great pride, absolutely no problem. It is central to our business plan that we be able to sell this machine in New York and Pennsylvania. So what you have is in our election administration and the security and accuracy of our elections versus the desire in a capitalist system for the vendor to maximize profit at all costs, very starkly presented by these machines. So fast forward, New York has a rigorous sort of the machines to outside testing. The ExpressVote XL goes through the testing process. It's up for certification in July of 2023, and there is an outcry on the part of the public. We were one of the organizations that said you should not be certifying this machine, among other problems, because New York election law has a provision consistent with HAVA that says a voting machine or system to be approved by the State Board of Elections shall provide the voter an opportunity to privately and independently verify votes selected and the ability to privately and independently change such votes or correct any error before the ballot is cast and counted. And we said that cannot be satisfied by a machine that has a barcode. This controversy ended up being a 3 or 4 hour debate at the Board of Elections, where the commissioners went back and forth, the staff advocating vigorously. We could talk another time about vendor capture of boards of elections, about how you had to trust the vendor. And the staff took 2 really interesting positions. The first one was, well, if there's a problem and we have to audit, we won't audit the barcode that's actually the tally. We'll only go with the text. So why do you have the barcode? Okay? And they also, recognizing that the throughput for these machines was slower than the scanners, adjusted the number of voters that were acceptable per unit, requiring more purchase of the unit per precincts of the most expensive machine on the market in New York. So they went ahead and on a 3-to-1 vote, which is pretty unheard of because usually it's unanimous, they did go ahead and they certified the ExpressVote XL. So as I said, I personally am frightened of these machines, and so we decided to file a lawsuit. Subsequently, we filed a lawsuit right at there is a 4-month period to challenge an administrative action. Certification under the law is an administrative action. And so we had 4 months to file a lawsuit asking for a declaration that the Board of Elections did not follow the law and the certification was invalid and had to be rescinded. In that time period, the Northampton problem arose, right? Where we saw the real life mismatch between the voter's intent and what this machine does. So we filed our litigation. No surprise, it was opposed by the state, and no surprise, ES&S came in as an intervener. They were permitted to intervene. And the first thing they did, as Martha foreshadowed for me, is they said, these people don't have standing. No problem has actually arisen. This is premature. Nobody's actually purchased these machines, right? So we had, at the time in our complaint, we said they are actively marketing, they are about to sell. And as voters, we are frightened and our right to vote is impinged, and the public's faith in elections, which is what this provision in the law is about, is damaged. The state and, of course, ES&S said, nonsense, since they didn't say there were actual sales, this is premature. Guess what? We didn't know there were actual sales. The record in the court, actually, ES&S has admitted that during that time period, they entered into contracts with Monroe County, which is Rochester, and Erie County, which is Buffalo. And because of our lawsuit, Monroe was smart enough to demand an indemnification. If the certification is rescinded, then they get their money back, or new machines, okay? But of course, we did not have that in our complaint because we didn't know that at the time. That's information in the hands of the defendants who were basically playing Potsy with the court. Very deceptive. At the end of the day, after several conferences with the trial judge who was complaining about how she had too many cases in front of her, she issued a really somewhat unusual order where she said, you know, I think they might be right about the law. This probably isn't a machine that allows a voter to verify their vote independently, but they didn't plead actual sales, so go away, you don't have standing. Well, we're not going to put people's vote at risk because of a misstep and a misunderstanding by the trial court. So we have filed an appeal. The Intermediate Appellate Court heard our appeal at the end of May this year, and we are now waiting for a decision. If we are successful and we are found to have standing, because this is an incipient threat, and ES&S has admitted in the record that they have sold these machines, this is not speculative anymore, then we will be able to go back to the trial court. And this is actually very simple to resolve. Well, not simple, fast to resolve at the trial level, because there are no questions of fact. Nobody disputes that this machine only reads the barcode to tabulate and cast the vote, to cast and tabulate the votes. So we don't have any issue of fact, it's a pure interpretation of law. I'm not a betting person, but I suspect that if we win at the intermediate trial court, ES&S will try and go up to our Court of Appeals, our highest court, to try and keep us from getting that legal ruling. So we're in the middle of a contentious lawsuit. It is pretty obvious why ES&S is fighting this tooth and nail, because we are interpreting not just New York law, but as Susan pointed out, similar language in HAVA, which could have real ramifications. So the question really becomes, why are the vendors so stuck on this particular technology? And I don't have an answer for that. I will say that we drafted and introduced a bill in the New York legislature when we filed our lawsuit, which would require voter-handled ballots, either directly hand-marked by the voter or by ballot marking device, ballots which remain under the control of the voter at all times. So the hybrid machine of any kind is a problem, but it's basically acknowledging what so many have talked about here, which is you need to have a voter-controlled, not a machine or computer-controlled ballot. You will not be surprised to hear that that bill has passed our state Senate at least twice and has been blocked by ES&S at the assembly level. So it is not yet law, because they have invested a huge amount of money into what we see as a faulty, unreliable technology, and in a business setting, they have no way to back off it. And so we are caught now with 2 counties which have invested in these machines and are using them, a third which had completed a negotiation and now has backed off for various reasons unrelated to our lawsuit. And we very much feel that New York's voters are at risk. So it's now in the hands, unfortunately, of the courts. And I would hope that given, I think, the significant analysis and the concerns of the election security community, that we get vendors that are more responsive to what are very, very real concerns, that voters need to have confidence that they control their ballots. And the technology, as it has been developed with a lot of off-the-rack components slammed together into a large, expensive unit, does absolutely removes the voter from direct control, and we believe undercuts the voters' confidence in this highly polarized atmosphere of the reliability of our elections and how they are cast, the votes are cast and counted. So stay tuned. It's now a question of what the courts will do, and when we have a decision, we will definitely let people know. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Yeah? No. They originally started certification in 2019. We filed, the machines were certified in July of 2023, and within 4 months, which is November of 2023, we filed our litigation. And it just got attenuated in the courts for reasons that have to do with the crazy legal system in our country. Hold on, wait for the mic.
Yeah, you had said that the legislature had twice passed the bill to...
One house.
And one house. And what happened? Lobbying or?
Lobbying by the vendor.
Yes.
Very directly. And the vendor was very smart. They hired a very well politically connected lobbyist who got a prominent organization's president to send a letter in saying that the not being able to use, that this was great for black voters. Our co-plaintiff is the Black Institute. So, you know, this is not a racial issue. This is really a question of voter confidence and the reliability of the technology and the choices that the vendor makes in putting the technology together.
Thank you.
Thanks. So when ES&S made their argument that there's no standing because there's no contracts yet, but they knew that they were actually engaging in contracts at the time, is there any repercussions or recourse in the courts that they seem to be disingenuous in that they, like, did the courts take notice of this? Can you move for sanctions, or I'm just wondering what,
well,
it seems so dishonest.
We certainly brought it to the appellate court's attention that they had a footnote in their motion to be admitted as a intervener plaintiff, and that they were arguing out of both sides of their mouths. So that is something that we have certainly brought to the court. There are pleading issues. You know, hindsight is, you know, 100%. Perhaps I should have pushed for some changes in terms of amending the complaint. We are where we are. But certainly, you know, we asked to expand the record to include the contract that they admitted. They vigorously opposed that. It's technically not a freestanding part of the record, but there are documents in the record where they do admit, and they've admitted in argument, that yes, they have sold these machines. So we're caught in a very strange, very technical legal crossfire here with very technical legal rules regarding the concept of standing. Are you the right person to bring this lawsuit at this time, which is what the concept of standing is.
Are there any vendors that don't use this underlying technology, and have you contacted them, maybe team up with them?
So Hart Technologies has now been certified in New York. It does not use a barcode, and I think they have a hybrid, but also they have the different components. Remember, all of the vendors have separate components, right? They are able to provide a more flexible system. The reason I personally have concerns about the hybrid systems is that when the machine, any portion of that machine goes down, the whole thing goes down. If the printer stops working, you can't get into the cabinet to switch out the printer, right? If the scanner is problematic, you can't get into the cabinet to switch out the scanner. But when you are running your election with independent components, and now in New York City, with an increasingly professionalized election administration, I'm happy to say and see, they have flying teams of of software technicians who have replacement parts, who have replacement machines. So if two scanners in a polling place that has 2 or 3 scanners go down, within half an hour they have been replaced. If the printers go down in the ballot on demand system, you can replace the printer. But if you have 2 of these gigantic hybrids and something goes wrong and it uses a blank summary card, which is approximately this size, everything stops. You can't vote. You cannot vote. You have no way to substitute a handwritten ballot because you don't have printed ballots. You don't have a freestanding printer. Ballot on demand is gone. It's all in your hybrid. So from an election administration point of view, not only is the expense high, the cost of storing, the cost of transporting high, and I understand a significant increase in power demands, which in New York City, how much juice you have to run your election computers is a big issue. You don't have a lot of well-wired spaces in churches and apartment buildings and school cafeterias necessarily. So a heavy power draw is another issue that we don't hear really honestly discussed between the vendor and the captured Board of Elections. So we have a lot of concerns. We think certainly vendors can be doing a lot better than what they are offering to our boards of elections today. And just the question of the barcode and the unreliability is kind of the cherry on top of a problematic cake, to my personal mind.
Check, check, check. Susan, thank you very much for the presentation. A quick 2-part question. First, can you confirm, was the ballot marking device being offered as the only mechanism by which to vote? Like you have to do that? You're not able to print a full ballot?
Correct.
Oh, wow, okay. And
correct. It is universal, universal hybrid, right?
Understood.
Which is, in all honesty, a goal of disability activists in my community who feel that they want all the ballots to be uniform.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Because the second question I was going to ask is, if the human readable text is what was tabulated, would you still support it as an accessible voting device for those folks that need it? But that's interesting that they're insisting that it be uniform.
I agree with Martha that readability in and of itself is not enough. There is an argument to be made for a cumbersome as it is, a full-faced paper ballot. I definitely subscribe to the idea that a ballot which is directly marked either by pen or machine by the voter is the way to go. That's what a ballot marking device is for. Yeah. But it should be a uniform ballot that everybody has the same ballot. And frankly, I use a BMD sometimes simply because I want to have the experience. Now, the problem in New York is that ES&S has failed to upgrade its BMD. New York City uses the oldest version of Automark. There is no more recent BMD which has been certified in New York. Friends, that is not an accident. That is a business choice to force the boards into the more expensive hybrid machines. We haven't even talked about what the maintenance costs would be on the hybrid machines, because as you know, this is definitely the razor blade paradigm on steroids, right? You spend a huge amount of money for the machinery, for the computers, and then you spend a huge amount of money to maintain them because none of our boards have the technical ability in-house to maintain the equipment, so they are dependent on the vendors, and that is a whole other blank check which the vendors get. So ask me how I really feel about this.
Testing. Thanks. I just want to add that Doug Jones, a computer scientist professor from Iowa, has published a public letter, which is on his website, about the New York law, and it concludes with clear praise for the concept of the auto mark. That is, and I might have gotten to this had I had twice as much time that I would never have asked for, by the way. But he says the concept or the design, it's not that machine as it currently is with the oldest design, could clearly be changed, but the concept of using a marker to mark the same ballot, the way it was designed and conceptualized by the person who basically, I don't know,
Now,
invented it.
ES&S
You may want to look that up on his website because it speaks directly to that question.
At a recent Election Verification Network conference, ES&S had a representative, and he said that they are developing a more modernized, upgraded ballot marking device. I'm waiting to see if they try and certify it in New York, because that's going to be a test to me as to whether they are going to make alternatives available in my state.
That's time. I'm just going to make a plug that there is an AutoMark next door if you want to take a look at it. Thanks very much to Susan. That was amazing.